everybody, Mike Griffith here. Welcome to tonight's Ingles on the Beat show. Good to see you guys again. It's been one heck of a I guess it's been a couple weeks since Georgia played in their bowl game. It seems like yesterday in some respects. Big win in hindsight. You see the Dogs finished number 7 in the nation in the polls. I think that's important. I think that's legit. I think where you finish. I know this. When I go back and I reflect on different football seasons, I always kind of want to see where did everybody end, right? So Georgia started the season, 4 or 5, something like that. And then to finish number 7 after all the difficulties, if somebody would have told you they're going to start 3 different quarterbacks, they're going to have 2 guys transfer out, they're going to have 4 injuries on defense, you're going to lose Richard LeCount, you're going to lose Jordan Davis. So for the Bulldogs to win a New Year's Six bowl, a 4th straight season and finish in the top 10, to me, that's kind of a pass. It's like, okay, it's not great. It's not a big loss. It's not a huge disappointment. I put out a poll on Dog Nation and at my Twitter account, at Mike Griffith 32, and I said, how would you label this season? And roughly 50% of the people said it was a disappointment, right? I think there were maybe 17 or 30% that weren't sure. Not many people saying they exceeded expectations, right? But it was tough. It was a tough season in some respects. But I think in the end, I think Georgia fans should probably go, yeah, under the circumstances, with everything that happened, yeah, it could have been better, but it also could have been a lot worse. And let's face it, if they don't beat Cincinnati, we're probably not having this exact conversation. We're talking about a 7-3 team, probably finishes 15th or 16th, and you go, well, it wasn't Kirby's first year, but it would have been a distinct step back from last year, when now I think we say, well, maybe about the same, right? Because you finished last year with that Sugar Bowl win. Your only losses were upset loss to South Carolina, and then you lose to LSU, a very good LSU team, by the way. So I did a final report card. I'm going to talk about that report card on tonight's show with you. I want to start out talking about the national championship game and kind of just following up on that. I haven't really had a chance to weigh in much. The game was a disappointment for me. It looked like the only way that Ohio State was going to win that game is if Alabama kept making mistakes, right? We saw Mac Jones fumble inside of his own 25-yard line, led to Ohio State points. Justin Fields, made some really good throws, missed on some throws. Hard to say how injured was Justin Fields. When he pulled it down and ran, he looked great. But watching Justin Fields off the field, I don't know. The guy kind of keeps a poker face. It's hard to read him and know, just how hungry is this guy, right? What's the body language like? Didn't see him around the teammates a lot. Really, again, a very hard situation to judge. And if Justin leaves Ohio State, got to think he leaves with an empty feeling. He had a great win over Clemson. I think that's his career highlight, to beat Trevor Lawrence head-to-head, avenge that loss from the year before. It's just a career you say, well, what might have been? What if he would have stayed at Georgia? In my opinion, had he stayed, not sure what would have happened in 2019. Even if Justin had won the quarterback job, I don't believe they would have beaten that LSU team. Don't think 2018, anybody did the wrong thing there. Georgia did come back and beat Florida. And then Jake threw for over 300 yards and they lost to Alabama in the SEC title game. Don't think Justin would have made a difference in that game. And the Sugar Bowl, the ship had sailed, right? Everybody was upset they didn't make the playout. So it kind of is what it is. Had Justin beaten Ohio State, I think this is something that really would have just, the fan base would have just gone on and on. And hopefully now everybody can just say, you know what? Justin went on and had a great career at Ohio State. Jake did the best he could in 2019, left early, and it just kind of is what it is. We can all just kind of leave it right there. And if you're a Justin Fields fan, then you can feel proud of what he did at Ohio State. If you're a Jake Fromm fan, you can feel proud of what Jake did. And to me, the controversy is over, right? I wrote one more story on it because Kirby talked about some of the early pressures Justin felt to play with Trevor playing at Clemson as a freshman. I thought that was a key part of the story, for all the people that go, well, why couldn't Justin just wait? I know Tim Tebow talked about that. He was willing to play his role. Why couldn't well, because Justin was seeing another player that he competed with have an opportunity early, and the family probably felt like he had an opportunity too, or should have had, and that increased the pressure on everyone, right? So I thought that element of the story was worth adding some more perspective. And now we move on, right? So now that is behind us. The championship game is played out. Nick Saban's greatest year, arguably, to do it with COVID. He overcame COVID. He overcame the false positive when he had to coach from home the first time against Georgia leading up to that game. Remember how crazy that was when he got cleared on that day? And also remember how Georgia led Alabama 24-20 at the half. You think about it, and as dominant as Alabama was, Georgia played Alabama full strength with Jalen Waddle and Dickerson at center and was beating the Crimson Tide at halftime. And that tells you, I believe, just how close this Georgia football program is to winning a national championship. They have gone toe-to-toe with the best. Kirby Smart has led Nick Saban at halftime all 3 games he's played them. That's remarkable. There's only been one other game that Kirby Smart has led at halftime that he lost, by the way, other than those 3 games. And I'll see if you guys can guess what that is. I'll tell you a little bit later on in the program. So the national championship game behind us, Alabama won it. Saban got the Bear Bryant Award as Coach of the Year. Congratulations to Nick Saban. He had a wonderful year, and now he's got to replace his offensive coordinator, Steve Sarkisian. What will happen next? I don't know. I know Alabama's in reload mode, and I know Bryce Young takes over at quarterback. I've heard great things about Bryce. I talked to his high school quarterback at Mater Dei because I was talking about JT Daniels. And so I asked Coach Rollinson about Bryce. He said he's a running back that can throw the ball. So, yes, Alabama will be good again. Devontae Smith is moving on. Waddle is moving on. Najee's moving on. Dickerson's moving on. Leatherwood's, they're losing a lot. They're not going to be as good offensively as they were last season. Defensively, maybe a little bit better. But to me, this is an Alabama team that Georgia can certainly beat next season. And, and I do think we'll see Georgia play Alabama in the SEC championship game, provided that Georgia can keep JT Daniels healthy. To me, I know we talk a lot about the cornerbacks. We'll get to that in a second, as far as Tyreek Stevenson transferring out, Tyson Campbell going pro, Eric Stokes going pro. But to me, the most important thing is the offensive line. This offensive line has to come together. You must find an answer at left tackle. You must find a bookend, someone you can trust, because JT takes hits, man. He doesn't get rid of the ball quickly. He's a guy that wants to hold it, that wants to make plays. And even though I think JT will get better and the internal clock in his head will move faster, he's still a guy who's going to take hits. He's a hero quarterback. He cannot help himself. Right? Jake had to learn to get rid of the ball. Jake had to learn to slide. Jake got very good at that. You could tell it hurt Jake. He wanted to make those plays, but Jake understood, particularly in 2019, that he needed to be out there. JT's got to learn that. JT's got to get there. I think JT's going to have more mobility the next time we see him. We know he's been working his way back from this knee. He's going to have an entire offseason to get healthy, to get better, to get stronger, to get leaner. I know mobility is a focus and something that he's working on. He recognizes he's not in the Pac-12 anymore. So we're going to see a better, stronger, more mobile version of JT Daniels. And still, I've got concerns about this offensive line. I had concerns about him in the bowl game against Cincinnati. JT Daniels got beat up, folks. That was not good. That should not have happened. Very disappointed to see JT Daniels get beat up the way he did against Cincinnati. And still, there he was at the end of the game. Takes over at his own 20-yard line, 1:28 left, no timeouts, and he's got to get it done. And he did. Pass to George Pickens, 3 throws to Kenny McIntosh, and a throw to John Fitzpatrick. And then we see Pedlinski with the 53, 54-yard field goal with 3 seconds left. And it's 22-21. The final's 24-21. And you look at that, and years from now, people look at that and go, I thought that Podlesny kick was a game winner. Was that game headed for overtime? No, it wasn't. You're going to know right away who was at that game and who was paying attention, because those that were paying attention will always remember that if Jack doesn't make that kick, Georgia loses. I mean, that was – what an amazing kick. What an amazing kick for Jack Podlesny to build off of the rest of his career. And how great is it that after losing Rodrigo Blankenship, one of the best that's ever done it at Georgia, you've got another kicker that you feel like is money. So want to get into some of the decisions of the guys that came back. Just kind of top of my head, good decision, bad decision. Who needed to leave? Who needed to stay? Who needed to leave? Well, Azeez Ojulari needed to leave. I mean, Azeez had an amazing year. He's a redshirt freshman. He had a knee injury as a true freshman. He's a guy with an injury history. When guys have had an injury history, I'm a big proponent of them going pro earlier, sooner than later, because I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I would probably be willing to say that if someone's already been injured once, they've probably got a greater likelihood of getting injured again than someone who hasn't been injured. And so I think it was absolutely the right call for Azeez to leave after his redshirt sophomore year. He had a fantastic campaign. He went out with a bang, playing in that bowl game, 3 sacks. I mean, I can guarantee you that, Kirby's going to point to Azeez, the only freshman captain that Kirby Smart has had in his tenure at Georgia. And he's going to say, look at what that kid did. He came back, he played in the bowl, and he was a standout. He was the defensive MVP. He got the Dog Nation game ball, and 3 sacks for Azeez. And really, I thought the difference-making play early in the fourth quarter of the Peach Bowl when he forced the fumble, and it led to some points. Ben Cleveland, I think Ben needed to go, right? 5th-year senior. Big Ben has had foot problems, leg problem, broke his femur. I mean, Kirby was saying that Ben was having some shoulder issues during the season. Ben is a warrior. I really respected Ben Cleveland. I think he did his job. I think he provided some leadership this year. I thought he was the best run blocker. Excited to see what he does in the Senior Bowl. And so Ben Cleveland, a guy that needed to go. Trey Hill was only a junior. He was a preseason All-SEC guy. Trey went. He needed to go. He had the arthroscopic knee surgery toward the end of the season. He wasn't there the last 2 games. When you're a big guy like that, again, you have the surgery. You need to go. And right now, where Trey projects is one of the top 5, I believe, centers in the country. He's got to make a business decision there. And I think Trey's ready to go. Jermaine Johnson, he transferred to Florida State, but Jermaine needed to go. Why did he need to go? Like you said, Mike, he was in line to be the next starter behind his. Well, he needed to go because he felt like he needed to go. The last thing you want is a guy staying on your team that has some doubts, or in this case, his dad had some doubts, about the rotation, about the playing time. And look, this is how Georgia does it. And if you're not on board, you need to go, because there's 10 other guys that want to take your place. And you don't want to have an issue in your locker room. And so that's why, even though Jermaine Johnson was one of my favorite players to watch for Georgia, because I liked watching the story of him going from a junior college and coming in and in his 2 years fighting his way in. I really thought he was earmarked to be a team leader next year, but if he wanted to go, then he needed to go. I was a little surprised he just didn't go to the NFL, because I think he would have been drafted. But, Florida State has an opportunity for Jermaine. And that's why, he went there, and he'll be happy. And so this opens the door from Adam Adams. Wow. Can I say it 3 times fast now? Adam Anderson and Nolan Smith. Now these guys have some opportunity. So that's exciting. Tyreek Stevenson, he needed to go. Why did Tyreek Stevenson need to go? Well, again, because he wanted to. And you don't want anybody in your program that doesn't want to be there. But 2, I just didn't think he was a fit. I know they talked about, he made this, play, but he got beat the whole game. He's not a cornerback. He can't play cornerback in the SEC. And at safety, he was adequate, but he didn't make any big plays. Like, he was close. You go, he almost made a play, but he never did. Right? Okay, it was 2 years of almost being there. Well, after 2 years, you ought to be able to make those plays. And he didn't, right? He wasn't there to make the play on Kyle Pitts. Oh, he just mistimed it. Well, you mistimed it. You didn't make the play. So a guy that just didn't quite have enough speed at corner and didn't quite have the nuances to make the sort of plays at safety or star, like maybe that we thought he could. I know in practice, Dan Lanning said, holy moly, we got a ball player. Well, we never really saw it happen in the games. He was close. Not to say Georgia won't miss him, not to say he's not a good player, but again, if a guy doesn't want to be at Georgia, then he needs to go. Zamir White needed to go, okay? Now, that's not to say Zamir can't have a good senior season, but, the knee injuries scare me a little bit. So 2 things here, opportunity or knees. I think Zamir could have gone to the NFL and made it as a free agent, if not a late-round draft pick, kind of like Elijah Holyfield, right? A very comparable player. Maybe Elijah a little bit better pass catcher. Zamir maybe a little bit better runner, maybe. Both tough guys, both special teams, both good attitudes. But I thought maybe Zamir would transfer somewhere where he could continue to get the kind of workload that he got this last season. I don't think he's going to get the same workload next season. And, Kendall Milton's coming. James Cook has arrived. Kenny McIntosh has arrived. It probably would have come to more of a head this year had Milton not gotten injured and Kenny not gotten injured and James not gotten injured. But with all the injuries, Zamir got his workload. I just wonder how will it be if Zamir stays and loses the starting job or doesn't get the same workload. Will the chemistry stay good in the running backs room? But for Zamir personally, I just felt like he could go somewhere else, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, and be like a feature back for a team and get the similar workload. I just think at Georgia, that's going to be very hard because the offense doesn't really fit him. At the end of the game in the Peach Bowl, you saw Kenny McIntosh in there catching the passes, or you'll see James Cook in there catching the passes. Kendall Milton is a guy that I felt was a better runner between the tackles by the end of the year. I thought Zamir improved as the year went on. And you know what? He might come back and prove me wrong and just have one whale of a season and hold the starting job and go for 1,000 yards. Hope that he does because he's a great kid. He's worked very hard. But my thought was, you got through this season healthy, Zamir. You've had surgeries on both of your knees. Either go pro or maybe go somewhere where you enhance one way or the other. But the Georgia deal, it just looks like it's going to be a struggle in the running backs room. I'm sure Kirby Smart and Del McGee will manage this, but to me, this is going to be it's going to be tricky. It's going to need to play out. Trey McKinney needed to go. Trey was ready to go. Trey came in as a graduate transfer from Florida State. Had the knee injury last year. Again, when you've had an injury like that, and you're able to get over it, you need to go. You don't want to come back and injure it again. And besides, Darnell Washington, and has arrived, right? And we're going to see a lot of Darnell Washington, and I think John Fitzpatrick as well. Monty Rice, what a soldier, played half the year with a foot injury. You could see it. We could all see that Monty wasn't himself. Great to see Monty as a Butkus Award finalist. With that, right? With that first half of the show, I want to take a short break right now. And I want to recognize my sponsor at Ingles and thank them for everything that they've done this season, not just for me and the program and Dog Nation, but what they've done in the line of duty, right? Helping out frontliners during this horrible COVID crisis that continues to go on. And Ingles continues to deliver tremendous service. Let's take a moment and recognize Ingles.
It's in our hearts to feel for real. There's been ups and downs, turnarounds, good days and some bad. But we stand together for worse and for better. We'll always have your back. With open arms, heart to heart, hand in hand. Community strong.
Well, welcome back. It's the second half of the Ingles on the Beat show. And we were talking about players coming and going. Boy, roster management it's really like become something, right? It's become like you didn't think about this. Before it was like, February, first Wednesday in February, National Signing Day. Hoorah, right? Early enrollees, late enrollees, let's play football. Now you've got transfers seemingly year round. I know that right now that the one-time transfer and the name, image, likeness legislation that we'd all expected to kind of get rubber stamped and voted on in January, it's all on hold, right? Changes in the Senate, and so it's all pushed back. And so now some of these transfers that maybe we thought were coming to Georgia, everybody's kind of on hold now, like, okay, wait a minute, we want to see what's going to happen. And so now what we're really talking about is guys that declared to go pro and guys that decided to come back. And I'm sitting here kind of second guessing all this, right, with you guys tonight on the Ingles on the Beat show. Who needed to come back that left? I thought Mark Webb did. You know, Mark didn't play in the bowl game. I saw he had his foot in a protective walking boot. He is playing in the Senior Bowl. Mark, to me, is one of these guys. This is going to be a borderline guy of Mark, whether or not Mark Webb makes an active roster next year. I think he'll make a practice squad because he's a very disciplined, very impressive young man, a very hard worker, a guy you want in your locker room, a guy you want on your team because of his character, his work ethic. I think he's got a very high football IQ, but just a guy you want in your locker room. All that said, I think Mark could have used another year at the college level, maybe more starts, more snaps, more plays. There were a couple opportunities to make plays this year. He's just off. I would have liked to have seen him have a better final season at Georgia. Not that it was horrible, but it just wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think he would have benefited from more snaps and more work. I think a lot of Mark Webb. I hope he makes it in the league. Richard LeCount, another guy. Why do I say Richard LeCount? Well, I was glad to see Richard get in and play one snap, but the fact that he wasn't ready to go, like full go, kind of concerns me a little bit. The Senior Bowl is just in a couple weeks, and I'm really hopeful that Richard is going to be healthy enough to go out there and play like we remember him playing at Georgia. To my concern is, how far back is he from the injuries physically? We all know he took that motorcycle spill on Halloween night, and that was a tough accident. It really was. And so I'm concerned because, Richard LeCount, when he was playing early in the season, was a guy that was being talked about as a potential first round, second round guy. And now there's questions, and that worries me because Richard's had a great career at Georgia. What are they? A DGD, I think y'all call him. He's one of those guys. He's Kirby's guy. I hope the best for Richard. I would have liked to have made sure he was healthy. Would have liked him to come back and just get completely healthy because, you get that first shot in the NFL, and if you don't make it, how do you stay in shape for a year without football? So I'm worried about Richard. I'm worried about him. And maybe I don't need to be. He's got doctors. He's got agents. But really want to see Richard LeCount make it in the NFL. I kind of feel like he should have stayed. Malik Herring, another guy. Listen, I think Malik goes third or fourth round. I think he's a solid player, highly rated player. I know Pro Football Focus had him as the highest rated returning defensive lineman coming into the season. I just didn't see the dominance at that defensive end position that sometimes you need to see for a guy to go, first round. And could Malik have ever been a first rounder? I don't know. Maybe this is as good as he gets. And if that's the case and he's already reached his ceiling, then it makes sense to go. But I guess I just suppose that I feel like Malik Herring has a more upside than what we've seen, and whoever's going to get him will get a good deal. They'll get a guy that they'll bring into camp as a third or fourth rounder, and he'll get even better, and they'll go, man, what a steal, right? No, but maybe not. Maybe he's reached his pinnacle, his talent-wise, and he'll be just a good journeyman defensive lineman. But I still think there's some upside left there. I would have liked to have seen him get. DJ Daniel, cornerback, another guy. I thought DJ played really outstanding in 2019. I go back to that Notre Dame game, and it was DJ Daniel who had the break up there at the end. And how many times did we see DJ Daniel come up and run support? Just thought DJ Daniel played really, really well in 2019. Now, as I understand it, he had an ankle injury early in camp this year and lost his confidence and never really got back to being the guy in 2020 that he was in 2019. I don't really understand that. I feel like that's one of those, there's more to the story that we didn't really get. We never really interviewed DJ Daniel. But he's a guy, though, that I think is an NFL player. It's just, where does he go in the draft? Now, he has got a Senior Bowl invite. Hopefully, he's completely over that ankle, and he gets back to being that gunfighter, as we call those cornerbacks, right? They're gunfighters. They line up there one-on-one, and he gets back to having that swagger and playing like he did in 2019. I know Georgia fans will never forget the plays that DJ made. Tyson Campbell is a guy that I really thought needed to come back. And listen, Tyson, these scouts are going to look at him and see the length and put him on the clock and see the speed and interview him and be impressed. But you put on the game film and you go, well, how good is he really, right? And, close, but not close enough on some plays. Another thing, could he end up at safety? There's people talking about that, that Tyson may not be a corner. He might be a safety. Now, what he runs and how he looks at the combine, it could make him a lot of money. If Tyson Campbell gets out there and runs a 4.3 something at 6'2", 190, he's going to get a good payday. But he needs it. He needs to go high. He needs a team to invest in him because he needs to get better. He's a guy that, again, kind of like Mark Webb, right? A good football player who didn't have his best season. And that's just kind of how I felt about Tyson. I felt at the start of the 2019 season, he was playing outstanding. And then the foot injury happened. And then this last season, I just never really felt like Tyson got in sync. I saw flashes of the guy that I saw in 2019, but the defenses in general, I thought they were really hurt more by COVID-19 than other positions. I thought Tyson was one of those guys. So while I think Tyson's an NFL player, I think somebody's going to get a steal, right? Because I don't think his film is great. And, if he would have come off a great season, then I think he could have been a first-round pick. I don't think he'll be a first-round pick. Now, I want to tackle another subject. The guys that came back, it kind of became a thing. I'm trying to remember who declared they were coming back first. I think Devontae Wyatt, which was huge, because that played a role in Jordan Davis. Jordan was like, that's what we're doing, huh? Remember the story? And just such a playful guy. Then JT Daniels said he was coming back. And then James Cook came back. And you went, okay, wow. Because, JT and Cook, Devontae. And then we're all waiting on the big domino, right? Big domino, Jordan Domino Davis. Maybe that's what we ought to call him, domino, right? Because when you think about a domino falling, there's an effect. And Jordan Davis, he has that effect, that domino effect on an offensive line. He knocks one guy over and they all go over. Maybe I'm going to call him Jordan Domino Davis because I did say that was the biggest domino to fall was when Jordan came back, because I really believe that really, and I said on Feinbaum, that doubled Georgia's chances. And the reason I said that is because having Jordan Davis on defense is like having a 12th defender. He literally takes up bodies, 2 and sometimes 3. There's nobody that's going to single block Jordan Davis. He's not going to plug one gap. He's going to take 2. He is a true zero nose, double gap. Love this guy, gets a push. And then beyond what he does on the field, off the field, he brings fun and character to the locker room. And you just can't put a price on a guy like Jordan Davis who can bring that sort of fun. I mean, who doesn't like to see a 340-pound guy dance? But he does, and he enjoys it, and he loves football, and yet he's still able to go out there and be an absolute wrecking machine. And I think he just changes the Georgia defense, and Georgia fans should be so excited. Him or JT, I don't know who the fan favorite's going to be next year, or George Pickens because of the amazing plays George makes, although he makes some maddening plays. It's a tough vote between those 3 guys for me. But there became a habit of guys announcing they were coming back, right? And former Georgia quarterback Hudson Mason made a comment on Twitter, oh my gosh, you got guys that would have been undrafted free agents coming back. Well, I get what Hudson was saying. And I don't hold it against Hudson. Even if you disagree, I don't think you should hold it against Hudson. The same reason if you disagree with David Pollack, you shouldn't hold it against David. Because what you have with Hudson and David are 2 former players that are willing to speak their mind. And there's a value to that. Terrence Edwards is a guy that does that for Dog Nation after games with Brandon Adams, right? There's a value when you talk to a former player who's willing to give an opinion. They're not always, wanting to blow sunshine. There's some phrase for, what do they call them? The Disney dog phrase, where only say good things. I don't know who these guys are, but I've heard people say that there's certain Georgia fans that are, or Georgia fans or Georgia players that are Disney. It's refreshing. And so, you might go, Hudson, you shouldn't have said it. Or you might say David Pollock, you shouldn't have said it. But he's giving you a real opinion, and there's a value to that. And that's Hudson trusting that he can talk to the fan base and give you an opinion. He's an informed opinion. All right. He wasn't being negative. He wasn't trying to be ugly. And at the time, I kind of agreed with him. I kind of went, yeah, this is kind of getting out of hand here. I mean, did we really think Kearis Jackson was going pro? Kearis is a nice player, but did anybody really think he was going pro? But then I stepped back and I went, well, you know what? Maybe it's not even about Kearis announcing he's coming back because there was the threat of him going pro. It's just kind of a team thing, right? Jake Camarda said he's coming back, right? Then Zamir announces he's coming back, and it's just kind of a pledge. It's like a public pledge that I'm coming back to be a part of unfinished business, not like I'm coming back and I was thinking about going pro. So I kind of could see it both ways is what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, I just, I guess I shouldn't lecture people on what you should think and not think. But I guess my thought was I saw some Georgia fans get really upset at Hudson. And I just kind of went, oh, come on. Pollock says things all the time, but at least you have former players that are willing to give you opinions. And that's so much better than having former players that don't ever say anything. It makes the world a better and more interesting place. Just because you disagree doesn't mean you got to hate them, right? Any more than when you disagree with me. And I know all of you at times, I've had opinions that you've disagreed with. And I still have opinions that you disagree with. I'm not perfect. And sometimes I look back at things that I thought and went, yeah, I guess on second thought, maybe I wasn't right about that one, right? And I'll admit it when I'm wrong about things. I said Georgia would play Alabama again in the SEC title game and beat them the second time, and I was wrong. Okay, I said Georgia would beat Florida in overtime this year, and I was wrong. The quarterback situation didn't get solved as quickly as I thought. I thought JT would be ready to play by the Florida game. He wasn't, and so they lost, and I was wrong about that prediction, and I feel bad about that. I don't like being wrong about things. I also said I thought Georgia would blow out Cincinnati. I was wrong about that. I didn't give Cincinnati enough credit. I really believed Georgia's offense would just blow them out of the water. But the offensive line was more of a shakeup than I realized. 3 guys got moved positions, not just one, but 3. And JT didn't have protection. And the big upset was Georgia couldn't run the ball. See, I thought Georgia could run it, and then Cincinnati would have to come up, and then JT would beat him deep. But Jermaine Burton had COVID. I didn't realize that, or he'd been out for so long, so he wasn't himself. So I guess my point is, though, is when you're in the opinion business, all you can do is be authentic, try to give informed opinions, be authentic with your opinions. You don't say things just to say things you believe, give informed opinions, and share your perspective. And, I have perspective from covering Georgia 3 seasons, but I also have perspective from covering other programs, other places. And so that enables me to maybe see things through a lot of different prisms in the kaleidoscope, as I said. That this year's Georgia offense would be the kaleidoscope offense because it looked different every time we saw it. But to finish that up, I guess I just want to reinforce what I was saying that Georgia fans do a great job, I think, on social media. Not saying that they can't get a little ornery. Everybody gets a little ornery, but for the most part, I think the Georgia fan base is very supportive of one another. There's not a lot of infighting on Georgia Twitter. I love the support that Georgia fans give their former coaches, whether it's Coach Goff or Coach Donnan or Mark Richt, certainly Coach Dooley. You don't see Georgia fans saying bad things about their former coaches like I see happen other places. And I think that's really classy. And, that's why, one of the things I really like about covering this team is that I think it's a very warm fan base, and I think they really take care of one another. I know on Twitter, every now and then I might get a Florida fan. I'm still mad that I said, that Kyle Trask would finish 4th or 5th in the Heisman voting. Well, guess what? He did. But when I said that, you would have thought that I said he was the worst player ever. And I was absolutely besieged on my Twitter account at Mike Griffith 32 by Florida fans. And I'll say this, there were Georgia fans that came and said, hey, you know what? Griff's just giving you opinion, right? Don't take it personal, Florida. This is Mike. He gives opinions and he's just going to tell you what he thinks. And I'd sit back and a lot of these people, I would friend, if you follow me on Twitter, I follow you back, and that's because it's like, I need allies on social media, right? And I appreciated that. Just so you know, I'll reveal my Heisman vote now. The Heisman does not allow you to reveal your vote. I voted Trevor Lawrence number 1. Now that was before Devontae's, big games. We had to vote before the college football playoff. And I thought Trevor Lawrence, played remarkable against Notre Dame. And I thought that Trevor Lawrence was the best player in college football. Devontae Smith, I felt like had the best season, but he didn't start the year as the best receiver on his own team. That would have been Waddle. So he had a great season, but was he the best player? And, could Alabama have won a national championship if Waddle stayed healthy and Devontae Smith had gotten hurt? Probably. Now, could Clemson have won the ACC without Trevor Lawrence? Probably not. They lost to Notre Dame earlier. With him, they won. And Trevor has won a national title and took down Alabama as a freshman. And then last year, I thought he played remarkable until he ran into Joe Burrow and an LSU team that I still think is better than the Alabama team we saw this year. So Trevor was my number 1. I went with Devontae Smith as my number 2. And then as my number 3, I went with Najee. I said early on, I like Najee. I thought he played big in the big games. I thought he was a difference maker. I didn't think Alabama would have been the same team without him. And so I went with Najee. And Mac did some great things. His numbers were wonderful. Trask did some great things. His numbers were wonderful. But I felt both of those guys were part of a bigger system, right? Whereas I felt like Trevor Lawrence had to make plays in a Joe Burrow kind of way. I felt like these guys just kind of sat back there and played Pop-A-Shot. And, I go back to, Mac fumbling on that, or getting hit by Aziz in Georgia, throwing that pick early on, or fumbling inside the 25-yard line. It didn't necessarily, what happens when the play breaks down? What could Mac and Trevor do? And I kind of held that against them a little bit. You only vote for the top 3. Okay. Now, had there been a top 5, I probably would have included those guys 4 and 5, and in no uncertain order. Kyle Trask, to me, was a guy when he lost to LSU. I thought that was costly. Okay. The pick 6 that he threw, and then Dan Mullen saying he was missing all these reads. That's when I went, boy, I just can't vote for Kyle. He's having a good season. But I had thought early on when I was saying 4 or 5, my reasoning at that time was, I didn't think Florida was playing great at that time. Kentucky had kind of given him some trouble. Tennessee, there were moments, and I just kind of thought, if he doesn't beat Alabama, it's going to be really hard for Kyle to win the Heisman Trophy. And then I thought either Justin Fields or Trevor would make a late charge. So in my mind, it was Najee and Mac or Devontae. Out of those 3 Alabama guys, 2 of those guys are going to finish ahead of Kyle because Alabama will beat Florida. And then you'll see either Trevor or Justin Fields make a charge late. And that's how I came up with thinking that he was in the top 4 of the 5. Now, had he beaten Alabama, it would have been a completely different story. And Kyle played tremendous against Alabama. I was very impressed with his efforts, but the ship had sailed. He didn't win the game, and he did not play particularly well against LSU. And so that's how my vote went this year. It didn't matter. Devontae won it. I was glad that he won it. I think he's a worthy candidate, first receiver to win it since 1991. It doesn't bother me. I don't vote for who I think is going to win it. I vote with who I think is the best. And when they say best player, that brings a lot of things into consideration. I dialed it all the way back, and I kind of gave Trevor some extra points and Justin some extra points for being vocal about helping college football season happen this year. And some people might go, well, wow, you shouldn't have done that. Well, I did. And I don't feel bad about my vote. So, and to tell you this, I voted. I think I actually voted for Trevor last year as well, and that was before Joe Burrow beat him. Now I go back and I go, oh my gosh, I should have voted for Joe Burrow, and because I've got a whole new respect for Joe Burrow. I mean, what Joe Burrow did in the national championship game, I just said, okay, this guy. And in the playoffs, I said, oh my. Last year we voted before the playoffs. This year we voted. I guess this year we voted before the playoffs too. So it was a later vote. That was interesting. The timeline was all messed up. So those are some of my thoughts. I want to go over this too. I want to finish up on this because this video is going to run with my story on the grades. So I graded each position group, and I'll go through them kind of quickly because I wrote about it. I only gave the quarterback position a C+. I know JT finished strong, but when I looked at the pass efficiency numbers, Georgia was 6th in the league. There's 14 teams. So they're right in the middle. I mean, that's just a little bit above average in the league. That's the scale. It wasn't a great year for Georgia quarterbacks. There were some downs. And, look, it's a tough curve, but at Georgia, you're supposed to beat Florida now. You're supposed to play in the SEC title game. And, in the second half against Alabama and against Florida, I can't overlook those performances by the quarterback position. Running backs, I think I gave them a C+. Just like the quarterback, I think Georgia was 5th in the league in rushing. Despite the commitment, there were, all the guys averaged more than 5 yards per carry, but there were a couple of games where Georgia, really got held down. I held below 50 yards by Mississippi State and Cincinnati. That's not acceptable. That's not an above average offense. All the players had fumbles. Kenny McIntosh was the only one that didn't have a fumble, and nobody made first or second team All-CC. That this is supposed to be RBU, and nobody made first or second team. So no soup for you. Right. C+. Receivers, C+, right? You're saying, oh my gosh, Mike, we're being so hard. Well, yes and no. I mean, look, Pickens made some great catches. Jermaine Burton had some good moments. Kieris was hot, but these guys also had some big drops. Kieris drops a touchdown. George drops a touchdown. Kieris has a 4th and 1 drop in the Cincinnati game. Kieris has an interception off his hands into another guy. Jermaine runs the wrong route against Arkansas, turns into a pick. George gets a couple personal fouls in the water bottle. So you just can't do that, right? That's you can't have 5 good plays and 2 really bad ones. That's not championship football. That's below the standard of what Georgia football and SEC football is all about. You didn't see Devontae Smith dropping 4th down catches and squirting people with a water bottle. I mean, come on, right? So C+. Offensive line actually graded out higher than quarterback, running back, and receivers, all C+. I gave offensive line a B-. I thought Matt Luke did a nice job with a younger unit. Liked the way they came on. Warren McClendon, I think he's probably a freshman All-American. There were some snap issues early on with Trey Hill. Warren Erickson came in and proved to be a great utility guy and fill that spot. I like what Ben Cleveland did at right guard this year. Justin Schaefer at left guard started strong late in the year, looked like he was slowing down a little bit, wasn't playing through the whistle. Glad Justin Schaefer's coming back because I think that's going to make for a very competitive situation. I'm sure Justin has matured and grown up since last year's off-field episode. I want this to be a happy story. This is a guy that had a neck injury, if you'll recall, and I'd like to see Justin build his NFL resume and really make the most of this extra year coming back. I didn't have him on the list. I'm glad he came back. I thought that was a really good decision. And then the left guard, I should say, because Justin's actually going to move to right guard, apparently. Jamari Salyer, it was good to see Jamari come back. That was a good decision. Jamari is another guy who needs to grow and get better and more dominant. You see what Solomon Kinley did with the Miami Dolphins. So proud and so happy for Solomon Kinley. And I said from the start, and listen, I know Andrew Thomas is amazing. He's amazing. But I think Solomon Kinley is going to be a long-term NFL guy. He's a very versatile guy. He's a very athletic guy. I'm so happy he's in Miami. He looks like a perfect fit for the Miami Dolphins, and really excited about Solomon McKinley. Hoping that Jamari Salyer can realize his potential and be one of those kind of guards. And I think he will be. Solomon kind of went late in the draft in the 4th round. I thought he was a steal. I think that Jamari could end up, maybe as a 2nd rounder. Next year, I expect Jordan Davis and Jamari to be on Outland Trophy lists at the beginning of the year, watch list. And left tackle, we don't know. Is it Broderick Jones? Is it Xavier Truss? Is it Tate Ratledge? There's a lot of talent in that room. A lot of competition, man. This offensive line is so stacked right now. What I'd like to see Georgia do is rotate a little bit more. I think with the schedule, since you're not playing an all SEC schedule, I think you're going to see more rotation and more opportunities for more guys to play, something Georgia really didn't get this year. On the defensive side, the defensive line, I gave him an A+. This is the number 1 run-stop defense in the country. You guys know I can't say enough about Jordan Davis. I thought Julian Rochester played well before he hurt his knee. Devontae Wyatt. Jalen Carter excited us, flashed at times. Trayvon Walker, I thought he did a nice job with Malik Herring. And then Azeez Ojulari, obviously. Nolan Smith had a couple of moments, needs to finish plays, let that Cincinnati quarterback get away from him. Can't do that, Nolan. Adam Anderson, a guy who just seemed to have great electricity every time he was in there in pass rush situations. Let's see if Adam can set the edge. Adam, that's the challenge. You know what the challenges are in run defense. He is a freakish athlete, though, and I'm excited to see what Adam will do next year. Linebackers, I gave him a B. Not quite enough playmaking there. Unfortunately, Monty got injured. We talked about the foot injury suffered against Alabama, slowed him down. Kobe got hurt in November. Kobe had like 3 games in a row where he's getting double-digit tackles, and then he had like 1, 2, 1. It's like, okay, something's going on here because Nakobe is that guy. Go ahead and put pressure on Nakobe Dean to be Roquan Smith. He can handle that pressure. He's a 5-star. He's turned out to be who we thought he was. He played through a high ankle sprain as a freshman. Late in this last season, he played through his shoulder. This guy's a warrior. He's going to come back from the shoulder good as ever, and I expect Nakobe Dean to have kind of an all-American year next season. But not quite enough playmaking. Quay Walker, not quite there yet. Day late, dollar short, misalignment. Need Quay Walker to take another step if he's going to be an NFL linebacker, right? He's certainly got the build and size and speed, but he's got to put it all together, and he's got to just be able to react. It looks like he's just thinking out there. That could be just an experience thing. It does take time, and I know Georgia coaches are obviously excited about. You wonder about Channing Tindall. What could he do? Keep an eye on that inside linebacker position. It's going to be interesting. Secondary, I only gave him a B. I'll go ahead and say it. Probably the most disappointing unit on the team this year, only because our expectations probably weren't realistic. If we're going to be honest about it, Kirby tried to tell us. Kirby did. Kirby pointed out there was some climate games last year against Kentucky and A&M, and he pointed out to us that there were some circumstances where maybe the defense wasn't as good as we thought they were. And the secondary, to me, some key injuries this year. It really hurt to lose DJ Daniel. Tyson Campbell, as I said, didn't have, Stokes was amazing. Stokes was an All-American. Lewis Cine, the best hit in college football I've ever seen. And it was clean. It was a shoulder. Pitts ducked into it. But, Kyle Pitts, he'll never go over the middle of the same again. And, shame on Florida for throwing that against Lewis Cine. Lewis is merely defending his turf and led with the shoulder, clean hit, one of the best hits in college football I've ever seen, no pun intended. And, Lewis Cine is a guy that was growing on me anyway. I love the way he come up and run support. I thought he looked a little injured late. I know that, Kirby told us he had missed some practices, and that's why Lewis didn't look like himself in the bowl game, but really excited about this guy. Looks like the kind of guy that can be a team captain. Certainly looks like an NFL talent. Really excited about Lewis Cine coming back. I know there's a lot of rebuilding to do in the secondary. Losing Richard this year really hurt. Richard was a difference maker. Christopher Smith, I thought he did adequate. Needs to get a little better and run support and get more physical. Latavius Brainey grew up right before our eyes in the bowl game, but that was Cincinnati, right? That wasn't SEC competition. There's going to be questions. I want to see Amir Speed get some opportunity at corner next year. I want to see Jalen Kimber get some opportunities at corner next year. These are guys, Darren Branch, right? There's going to be a lot of reloading. Keely Ringo coming off the labrum. These are guys we didn't see a lot of. So only a B for the secondary. Special teams, A minus. Jack Ponlesny, wow, what a finish. I think he missed only 2 field goals all year. Jake had an All-American type of year. He was 4th in the nation in punting average. He also kicked off. Thought he did a really good job. Kick returns were going good with Kenny McIntosh before the injury. Don't really need him back there anymore. Thought Kieras handled that well. I think this can be a real role for Kieras. He's a very trustworthy guy. Kirby Smart has a lot of trust in Kieras Jackson. This is a guy the head coach really likes. And when Kirby identifies a guy, he's usually right. Coaching, this is tough. Only gave him a B. Listen, I think this is an A unit. I really do. This was a tough year for Georgia. And again, to be fair, the other guys are getting paid too. And when you're Georgia and you've had great success doing things a certain way, why change, right? The problem with that is that everybody studies you. Everybody game plans you. You're marked on everybody's calendar. And so everybody has a new and a different way that they're going to attack what you do. And chances are they haven't shown it yet. So I think that affected the grade a little bit. Can't get away from 38 points in the first half against Florida. There was some clock management issues there, some play calls you wish you had back, as Kirby would say. Breakdown on the wheel route shouldn't happen. That's not Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning is one of the best coaches in the country. To see Georgia have a breakdown like that, I don't think you'll ever see that again. That was just one of those crazy things that happened. Richie was out. I don't think it happens with Richard LeCounte out there because he was an eraser kind of guy. But that hurt. And you give up 564 to Alabama and 571 to Florida. That's just not good. It's not good with the talent that you got. Part of that's the offense too, by the way. If your offense is going 3 and out, which they did 4 times in the first half against Florida. Florida had 9 possessions. That's why they had 38 points. They had 9 possessions all of the 2019 game, right? They had 9 possessions in the first half alone. And then the second half, some great adjustments, right? Florida didn't even get in the end zone in the end. They scored 6 points in the second half. People, they were taking their foot off the gas. No, they weren't. Kirby adjusted with Dan and Schumann, and they shut them down. The offense just wasn't able to respond that game. The injury to Stetson, second drive, he throws a touchdown pass and gets hurt. It's 14-0, he goes out of the game. And, he wasn't the same guy coming back. And Dwan just wasn't quite ready yet, wasn't quite ready to take over the offense. So B, and then overall a B, right? We talked about a championship season. It just, things need to work out, and it just didn't quite work out. Georgia had, JT just wasn't ready to play. Newman transferred, and Alabama was the team with the continuity quarterback. And yet still, Georgia's winning that game 24-20 at halftime. Stetson gave you what he had, but eventually teams figured out what he didn't have, and they adjusted. And it's a chess game, right? And Georgia didn't have the next move. And then when the Kentucky game was just, I don't want to call it a disaster. That's a strong word, but the Kentucky injuries, that was just, what a physical game. I mean, the schedule just, and I called it, I'm not proud of this, but I told you this schedule was troublesome. When you play, and Arkansas didn't turn out to be such a layup, by the way. So you played Arkansas and Tennessee and Auburn and Alabama and Kentucky, 5 very physical football games leading into Alabama, okay? And that's just not a friendly schedule. Or leading into Florida, all right? Not a friendly schedule. Meanwhile, Florida gets COVID at the right time. I don't know if there's such a thing, but they get 2 weeks off. They get a 2-week COVID stoppage. They come back. They pound the heck out of Missouri, 41-10, and they're primed and ready to go. And Georgia's kind of limping in, right? And Georgia still takes a 14-0 lead, but then the quarterback gets hurt. So you just kind of look back at it and you just go, oh, man. And Jordan Davis is out. If Jordan Davis is in, it's a different game. Richie LeCounte, different game. Kirby's never said that. He's never offered that. He doesn't give excuses. He's the next man up guy. But yet and still, it happened, and you got to count it against him. And so it's a B. Right? I mean, listen to this, though, folks. Think about this. I want to leave you with this note. Georgia football is at a place where you win, 80% of your games in a season. You go 8-2. You win a New Year's Six bowl. You finish number 7 in the country. your fourth straight top 10 finish, which has only happened once before with Coach Dooley back in the Herschel era. And we're talking about a B. And we're talking about half the people saying it was a disappointing season. Think about how high the standard has become for Georgia football. When we're talking about another top 10 finish being a disappointing, half the people call it a disappointing season, or when we rank it as a B, right? That's how close Georgia is to being at the top. I mean, they're right there. I'm surprised Oklahoma finished ranked ahead of Georgia. I was kind of like, wait a minute, I don't know about that. Oklahoma beat Florida. They didn't beat the same Florida team that Georgia played. I'm not so sure about Oklahoma getting the nod there in that AP poll. But the fact is they did. They finished 6th, and Georgia finished number 7. A&M was 4th, and Alabama was 1. Next year, and we got all summer to talk about this, next year, Georgia opens with Clemson. I'm going to tell you right now, I believe Georgia's going to win that game. And I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for joining me tonight on the Ingles on the Beat show. I look forward to seeing you again next Monday night. This was a little different doing it Friday. Usually I got the Friday night show. Kind of snuck in them Friday night Ingles on the Beat for you. And I'll join you again next Monday on the Ingles on the Beat show. Everybody have a great weekend.